Kingdom City. It's Pastor Corey Grice here, Kingdom City Church, Wallingford, Pennsylvania. I'm so excited this week as our mental health week. We have been focusing on mental health awareness in every aspect of children, as parents, as couples, as individuals. And I'm excited today because I have my sister, my friend, she's my therapist. She also can play my mama sometimes, or my big sister when I need to get in trouble, especially when I'm acting up with my wife. She seems to grab her noose, get me by my neck, and set me straight. But I'm excited today. We have been friends for a long time. We have watched her career blossom, and I will share a little bit of her story before we close out today. But my friend Aleiscia Abraham is in the building. Thank you so much, Aleiscia, for joining with us today.
I'm honored to be with you today.
So, she's from Boston, y'all. So she's a little bourgeoisie. If she come off a little she come off a little bougie. It's just it's that Boston in her. But we'll be merciful. She is a Patriots fan too. I should have worn my.
I am.
We're praying for. I don't know if are you still gonna be a Patriots fan after Tom Brady is no longer there? Like, are you still a Patriots fan?
So I think, I may be in a type of situation where I may have two teams because, that's my quarterback.
Oh, so you gonna support his team?
Yes, that's my quarterback.
Not where you live, not where you currently live, right? And you've been living for the last 10 years. Like,
who wants to support that team, sir?
She lives in the DMV, y'all. She technically should be a Redskins fan, but she's in disobedience. She's forsaken her husband, just like my own wife. They're both forsaking their husband and not supporting who they should now be supporting. But we pray.
Wow.
So, Aleiscia, I have watched you in the insurance industry for a number of years now, and for the last couple of years, you have changed your career focus. She's a graduate of that big Johns Hopkins University. Hey, shout out Johns Hopkins. But tell us what brought you to where you are now, what you're doing now specifically.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things brought me or helped me transition from insurance into the mental health world. A couple of things. One is actually experience with you or during our undergrad years. We were on campus when 9/11 took place. And so the outreach that we had to provide as a ministry on campus was integral in making sure that the students on campus were coping and were able to convey all of the stresses and the anxieties and the worries and the grief that they had when 9/11 occurred. So that was one experience.
Wow.
And then the other thing is also on campus, we had a lot of relationships and, there was always drama and, boyfriend, girlfriend drama and all that stuff. And I was like, Jesus. But what I did notice is a lot of us didn't come from two-parent households. And so we didn't have a really good model for what healthy and successful relationships looked like. And so I did see a gap there that I felt compelled to wanna be able to treat and to help our community in that way. So yes, I'm a therapist, but my passion is couples and making sure that they are excellent and that they're striving because they are the basis of the family. And so when we have a good foundation with the couple, then that leads to having great, healthy families. And so that's really where that all came from and resonated.
And we went to the great Lincoln University.
Yes, we did. Shout out LU.
Caney haters that might be visiting us today, or any other HBC that's watching us today. We are from that good original Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. Somebody should say amen on that one, all right? But Aleiscia, as I know, isolation can bring about so many different challenges, right? Being in this quarantine, we really have to face each other. Couples have to deal with things I'm sure that we maybe have been neglecting for quite some time, right?
Absolutely.
And we can't escape to work like we normally do
No.
or go to the bar. I mean, the most we can do is go sit in our car sometimes and get away and take a walk. But, we've seen a rise, and I've said this several times over the last couple of weeks, K-City, that we've seen a rise in the divorce inquiries over this last 6 weeks. A rise in domestic abuse
Yeah.
has risen. All kinds of things are coming out. And it's really just, the way I see it is our neglect, our neglect to our families, whether it be intentional, unintentional, the neglect to the maintenance and health of our families and our relationships is really being exposed. So let me ask you this. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing from couples while we're in isolation? What are some of those challenges that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think I want to piggyback on what you said and kind of segue into some of the challenges that we're seeing. So when I think about like the research around couples and crisis and management and management crisis, sorry, I think about crisis situations or situations that like we're in now with COVID-19. Those can either strengthen intimate relationships,
Hmm.
or they can expose problems that already exist and even magnify them to a certain degree.
Well,
So as we kind of like, journey through these COVID-19 streets or environment, I should say.
hey, these COVID streets, baby.
Yeah, it's real in these streets, and we have to think about the dynamics that are affected, how this is affecting our marriage and how this is affecting our relationships, if you're not married. And so it's interesting because it's set up this different dynamic, because typically you're seeing your spouse maybe, in the evenings and the afternoons at night, but now you are in this environment where you see your spouse 24/7, right? And right. And that can be overwhelming, a little bit taxing. And so now it's like you're collapsing all these roles into one. You are a spouse, you are still working at home, you are still a parent. Not only are you a parent, but then you also have to be an educator, and you
Right.
have right, you have all these roles collapsing into one. And so now we have to be able to manage all that and manage the foundation that I just talked about, which is the marriage. And so that becomes the difficult challenge. It's like, how do I make sure that we are still we're gonna come out of this healthy and prosperous, and so that we're not going down the road of divorce or separation. And I think those things can be done. I wholeheartedly believe that. I'm a true believer in marriage, and I have to believe that. So I think one of the things we have to kind of think about is, how does your spouse versus yourself, how do you manage crisis or anxiety differently? I think that definitely creates this challenge, or this war of the wills, if you will. Because we have anxiety, we have unemployment, we have financial insecurity,
Mhm.
we have a lack of social connection, we're juggling childcare, we have uncertainty about the future. And so what we've kind of noticed, or what we're seeing in our couple sessions, is that you have spouses who are living in different experiences, in the sense that how they're reacting or how they're responding to this COVID-19 is complete opposite. You may have one spouse who was like completely preoccupied with the COVID-19 stuff, and so they're tuned in, they're listening to everything, and they're telling you who died, and they're really focused on the risk of COVID-19. And then you have the other spouse who is like, okay, well, I'm just trying to figure out how we can maintain status quo, how we can maintain some semblance of our everyday life. And so now that becomes a war of the wills, and that promotes a lot of conflict, because
Mhm.
we're dealing with it in different ways. So I have to suggest, instead of focusing on how our spouses deal with it in different ways, how can we focus on bringing more connection to our marriage? How do we focus on being more responsive to each other in healthy ways, as opposed to kind of nitpicking and criticizing about how you're handling this or your role in that, and so forth and so on. So to your point, or to your question, what am I seeing? I'm seeing a lot of conflicts. I'm seeing we're having to renegotiate roles in our marriage, right? Because if you think about that, historically, you have a caregiver, and they could be working, but they're also doing a big bulk of the caregiving.
Sure.
And so now you have this role reversal where we need to renegotiate roles, because not only do I have to caregive, but I still have to work, and I can't do that 24/7, you know?
See, Kia, my wife is still going out every day, right? So I'm
Yeah.
laying in the bed where she's getting up, and I had to think to myself the other day, am I being chumped here? Like, she going out here to win the bacon. I told her when she came the other day, I said, how would feel going in here to bring this bacon in the house now? She looked at me like, is my dinner ready? Like, I'm in here prepping dinner, prepping lunch. I'm taking care of my kids. And I'm serious. I feel crazy some days because the roles have completely reversed. I mean, for the first, I guess not the first 2 years, but I think after the second year we were married, my wife got pregnant. Kia got pregnant.
Right.
A really difficult pregnancy with Madison. So she spent 3 or 4 years. Actually, she spent about 5 years home taking care of Madison. And then brother Vince popped up, so that added a few more years. And we chose for her to stay home, support our kids, get that balance. The roles have completely reversed. And I'm thinking, how did you not pull your hair out every day?
Right.
And while I'm in here rocking with these kids.
Right. It is. And so what that's done for you guys is it's brought you closer, because now you have this empathy, like, or even more sympathy, because you're experiencing all those early years that she had with being with the kids, So now, I do have a appreciation for all the challenges that you had. But I think a lot of the times, we don't really understand that, because that hasn't been our traditional role within the relationship. So now we find ourselves in this COVID-19 with the spouse saying, okay, I have to work and I have to take care of these kids. Can you help me with that? How can we partner in this? And how do we do it so that it's not contentious? And so it's going to take a spouse to kind of lean in and be uncomfortable with that everyday stuff, like the cooking, the cleaning, the child rearing, right? And so, right, exactly. And that's uncomfortable, because that's not your typical role.
Sure.
And so I think it's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Which is really what we're going to have to do in these situations. But also knowing that you guys are a team. And so it needs to be a team approach, as opposed to, like, you were probably operating in silos, right?
Sure.
Like, you do this, I do that.
Well, we're in the middle, right?
Right, exactly. And so now we can't operate on those silos anymore. This environment is not allowing that. So we're having to come back together and figure out, okay, how do we meet each other with all these challenges and these obstacles, and yet not forget about our marriage, and cultivating that, and spending time with that, and grooming that, and growing that, and making sure it's healthy. So just like you nourish a plant and you water a plant, we need to be nourishing our marriage in these COVID times. So, the question is, Aleiscia, how you expect me to do that, right?
But it can be natural to focus. If I'm focused so much on the pandemic, I'm so focused on managing the kid. I'm still working. I'm still managing. I'm still working. I still got to manage my kids, and I got a few jobs I'm working at the same time.
Right.
It is easy to forget about the marriage, right? It's probably the last thing on my mind, putting energy into something else. Especially if I've been married for a while, I would probably think you should know how to bounce back from this already. I would probably have some assumptions already that you should be able to figure this out. And if you're frustrated and upset, it's going to frustrate and upset me. I'm not going to try to figure out what's going on. Like, so I can see the dynamic of why this tension is rising. I can see it for sure.
Yeah, so why, so like, yeah, why this tension exists. And so when you add all of that in together, you have a pot full and wrought with conflict, challenges, um, ineffective communication. And so yeah, you're creating this family environment that is not fun to be around. So I kind of think about the Facebook memes that you see, and like people are trying to escape their families, right?
But
And
it's real. As much as we joking about it, some of the
yeah.
things are for real, yo. Okay.
Yeah, and it's really real. So instead of focusing on the challenges, what I want you guys to do, and what I want our married folk to do, and people who are in relationships, is I want you to focus on connection and good and healthy connection. So, we can spend all of our energy and time on what is driving us apart. And so we can focus on, well, you're not reacting to this COVID-19 stuff like I'm reacting, or you're not raising the kids like I would raise the kids or discipline the kids, right? So instead of focusing on those things, I actually want you guys to focus on connection. So what does that mean, right? So one expert says, we need to have more sex. And, yeah, okay,
Look,
that that's a good one. And I can talk about all the ways that helps. Yeah, that helps with connection. That's stress relief.
that's
That's
exactly what I thought
intimacy.
about when you say connection. I said, oh, well, we could do that.
Right. But that may not be everybody's go-to, right? And
Sure.
so I don't want us to pressure our spouses into having sex, especially if they don't want to have sex. So let's increase affection. Let's talk about intimacy and affection, so we can hug more, we can kiss more, we can massage each other. So what we're trying to do is create this environment where we're soothing each other, so that we're getting healthy connection.
Okay.
So I think that's the real thing of that. So yes, I said sex, but really we're talking about meaningful connection. And sex is the easiest way to do that, but you can also accomplish that through other ways.
Right. I
The
mean,
other thing is yeah, go ahead.
I think that I for me, and a moment of transparency. When we said we were going to be home for a while, I'm like, oh, we gonna be smacking bellies all the time. Like,
Right. Yeah.
Lord, thank you, Jesus. But
Yeah.
but the reality is, both of us have had to, like you said, soothe each other, support each other, find other ways of intimate. And we had some other ways of being intimate. And I'm not even talking about physical, but intimacy
Right.
all around. But
Yeah.
those have been the other means of intimacy: the massaging, the touching, the holding hands, the taking a walk. That has been more beneficial than the sexual part of our relationship altogether. And I
Absolutely.
didn't realize, and neither one of us realized how much we needed the intimacy more than we
Yeah.
needed when we needed the actual sexual intercourse connection with each other.
Absolutely. And those things should not be forsaken in this time. So, how do I do that in this time when my whole family is in the house, right? And so that's the thing. So, when I see my couples, when I'm first doing my first intake or with my couples, the first thing I ask them is like, okay, how many times are we engaging in date night? And 9 times out of 10, they look at me and they're like, what are you talking about, ma'am? Right? Date night. Who's got time for that? And so, what it is prioritizing your marriage, prioritizing the intimacy that you need to cultivate in order to lay down this foundation where when we have crisis and when we have challenges, we can always go back to this bedrock of intimacy that and connectedness that we've created. So just like I encourage you guys and I encourage my couples to have date night, you should still be having date night in these COVID-19 in this COVID-19 environment.
Right.
So that means putting the kids to bed early on a Tuesday, then
So
you do that, right?
put that melatonin in and good night, baby.
Right. Well, yes, that could be a that
I'm
could
not
be approach.
advertising for you to drug your kid. Please, that's not what Pastor said. I was just joking. Uh, but put him to bed. I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah, but put them to bed. But we should still continue to try to create some routine or with for our marriage. So like if you were having date night on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you need to continue to do that. And if you weren't, you need to start, if you have, I talk about this all the time. Like, I think a lot of times we think that sex needs to be spontaneous, but if we have sex on Tuesdays and Thursdays and if those are our nights, then you continue to do that in these times. Those are
Mhm.
necessary things in order, again, to create that connection.
I've only heard one other person talk about planning those moments, right?
Yeah,
But if we don't plan them, sometimes it won't happen, right?
absolutely.
And one spouse can feel neglected, the other one can think, oh, I'm not, they're not thinking about it, it's not important to them, they don't want me, don't think about me. But the reality is, it's just life happens. And if you don't make that intimate connection a priority by planning for it, someone's gonna
Exactly.
someone's gonna be hurt by it.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the times too, I think we have this distortion or this fallacy that, all of these affection and romantic connection has to be spontaneous. And that's not true. Even when you were dating your wife, right? You were preparing to have some type of intimacy. And I'm not just talking about sexual intimacy, but I'm talking about emotional or touching or hugging or whatever. You were preparing for that. You made sure that you showered, you shaved, you got a good haircut, you put on cologne. You were preparing for that. So in the same way, we also need to be preparing in marriage as well for intimacy. And
Right.
so we don't need to not stop doing those practices, but to continue on doing those practices. And I think to that point, when we're in this time of anxiety and crisis, our go-to is probably comfort, right? So we're probably wearing a lot of sweatpants and right. And so let's change. Right. So let's change up the routine. Let's make sure that we get dressed for date night so that it actually feels like date night. Let's get dressed. Let's see if we can order something new that we haven't tried in our neighborhood, and maybe we can Uber Eats that. Whatever it is that makes this that facilitates the environment in order to have the date night, you need to do that.
Why is date night so important? Like, why do I need to make that a regimen for us?
So think about that. So when you were dating, what was the purpose? So as you were dating and you're going on dates, what was the purpose of that? It
Yeah, I mean, hey, I wanted her to like me, fall in love with me, stay in love with me. It was my opportunity to impress, pull out all the stops so that she would know ain't nobody else gonna be treat you like I'm treating you, girl, right?
right, and that needs to be maintained.
Sure.
Right. And so that is something that we constantly need to be working at. We don't need to get comfortable in our relationships and feel like we don't have to work at it. And so that's when we don't do that, that's when we leave ourselves and our marriage exposed and for risk. And so we don't want that. We don't want someone else meeting those needs
And,
that our spouse
and
isn't getting.
that can happen. That can
and
happen.
and that and that very well can happen. But also too, date night reinforces the idea that I'm connected with you, you matter. This relationship matters to me and I'm prioritizing this. That's what that implicitly communicates to your spouse when you're making it a priority. And I know that can be like a little cumbersome because it's like it's one more thing I got to plan and one more thing I got to do. But take turns. All right, I'm gonna plan this date night, you plan date night for Friday. And so you take turns doing that. But it's so critical and so important that you're making sure that you're getting meaningful connection regularly, because it is so easy just to ignore that and continue on and get into the routine of life. And you didn't prioritize your marriage, and you wake up one day and you realize we're not connected and we're having problems getting back to a point where we're healthy. And so that's why it's important for us to really connect and do date night. Again, it's just laying that foundation for good communication, good intimacy, good emotional
Sure.
connectedness as well. And so it's laying all that foundation for that. Because if you think about it, that should be your safe space. That should be your haven.
Yeah.
And that should be the place that you go to find refuge and safety. And so, but you have to work at that too,
And that's
and
going to ask you, I don't want to cut you off, but like, what I'm thinking of, what if I can't stand the person that I'm married to, right? They've hurt me so much. There might have been infidelity, there might have been betrayal. Here we are stuck together. Date night seems like a good place to start to rebuild what's
Absolutely.
broken, right? And I want to say this to everyone who is listening. You got to start somewhere. You can't continue the neglect. You can't continue the unforgiveness. Things like this help us move towards healthy relationship, move us towards wholeness and our family again. And I'm not saying this from a place of a perfect marriage. Oh my God, no. My wife is great, but I have ruined everything several times in this marriage. Stop nodding your head so vigorously, Aleiscia. Don't just y'all see her nod like yes, he has, but no, it's the truth. I have done some damage in my marriage, and for whatever reason, but we've had to do the work. It starts with simple stuff like isolating a night, committing to, even if we were sitting on opposite sides of the couch, we still sat there. We watched the movie, we ate the dinner, we tried to laugh. These are the things that help rebuild some health in there. But go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
But I think to that point, for couples who are dealing with infidelity in the midst of this environment, I think that is so important. I think I as we're talking about this, I think we need, when we're talking about infidelity, you need to grieve the old relationship, the relationship that you had prior to the infidelity. But going forward, you have to kind of realize that this is a new point, this is a new start in our relationship, and we're not going to be able to get back what we had, and that's okay. But what we are doing, we're creating a fresh start, and so now you're getting to know your spouse again. Because there was definitely something that was broken, and so now we have to figure out what was broken and how do we move on from this point. When you think about you're breaking a bone, and you come back from that, it's stronger, it's healthier. Sure. And so that's the same way that I want us to approach marriage when we think about these things. And a way to do that, to make our marriage healthier and stronger, is that date night. And I know it sounds so simple, but it's real.
There's no magic wand that's going to come over and heal this marriage. No prayer you're going to pray and all of a sudden, some oil's on your head and you
Exactly.
This is the work you have to do. That's so good. That's so good, Aleiscia. You're so right about it.
Yeah. I think that the second thing, so when we're talking about going back to the main point with, I want us to focus on connection, but then the other thing too is I want us to think about how we're having conflict. Okay. And I think that's going to be so important. I think I call it conflict management, because we do need to manage conflict. So conflict should actually be scheduled. Conflict shouldn't be something that we spontaneously do and we go and scare the heck out of our spouse and start yelling. No, that is not the way it goes. So it's okay, spouse, we're going to talk about this very serious issue at 2:00, and we have an hour to discuss this. And so that we're not continuing to linger in this space of conflict. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we're creating an environment that's healthy for the marriage, so that we're not staying in the conflict, but we've designed a specific time for the conflict. And then after that it's over, and we go back to doing whatever it is that we need to do. So I also want you to think about, in terms of conflict, I want you to think about your response to stress. Okay. Because this is anxiety provoking, right? And so we all deal with stress differently. I know for me, I'm a little bit snappy, and I'm probably quick at my mouth, as my husband would say, right? And and I'm a little bit more sassier than I would be, and I'm probably a little bit more short, right? And I don't have a lot of patience. So I need to kind of understand, how do I respond to stress? How do I respond to anxiety? And how does my response affect my spouse? Yeah. Right? And those are definitely things that we need to take consideration of. So it's also doing some As we're in marriage or we're in relationship, we also need to do the internal individual work as well. And so how do I respond to it? Is it in a way that's not going to be healthy for this relationship? So do I need to actually do my own individual self-soothing before I have this challenging conversation with my spouse, right? Do I need to go and take my walk by myself? Do I need to go read a book, read some scripture, pray, do whatever it is that I need to do in order to get me into a place where I am grounded and I'm thinking clearly?
Yeah.
If you think about this in the environment that we're in, we're anxious. We're anxious just on a baseline level. We're anxious and we're stressed, right? We're in stress because the uncertainty. And if you think about it from a biological perspective, our nervous system is a wreck. We are in fight or flight mode
Right.
24/7, right? And so we have to make sure that we're doing the self-care, the individual self-care, to help soothe and to help us get out of this anxiety that is so high. And so those are the things that I really want to suggest is like, how are you responding to your spouse? How are you communicating to your spouse? Would you have communicated like that if you weren't in this stressful environment? So those are the things that I really want couples to kind of pay attention to your own internal things. But then also too, how you communicate is a whole different scenario too.
Oof.
Are you criticizing? Are you ridiculing your spouse? Are you stonewalling them in the sense that I'm just going to create this emotional distance and I'm not going to talk to you? Those aren't mechanisms in order for us to be healthy.
Let me
Yeah, go
stop
ahead.
for a second, because you're saying some great things. Like, I'm thinking about the point about scheduling our conflict, right?
Yeah,
Because I think sometimes we have these fantasies growing up that there is going to be no conflict, or
absolutely.
if
Yeah,
there is conflict, then my marriage is horrible. No, 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 no,
yeah,
no, no, no. Conflict is absolutely natural. It's a sign that we are growing. It's a sign that we actually are connecting. But
absolutely.
I forgot the term I want to use. But if you prepare for conflict, right? If you prepare for it, it's not going to catch you off guard. One of the couples that I really respect, and I want to say this, K-City, Aleiscia and her husband Jonathan are my wife and our best friends in the world. We love them dearly. They have one of the best marriages, and I meet people from all over the world. They have one of the best marriages I've ever seen. I've seen them walk through conflict. I've seen them manage so much. I have so much respect for them too. Well, there's another couple that I really respect, that they have a monthly meeting, right? Every month they decide, okay, the 15th or whatever day it is, this is the day that we're discussing what has happened these last 30 days. We discuss our money, we discuss our sex, we discuss whatever issues are coming up. And of course, there's, things come up emergency wise, but the fact that they point every 30 days, this is the day that we're going to have our fair fight. I thought it was one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen, but it helps them. Sometimes it gives them space to process whatever thing has been happening over those last
Absolutely.
couple of weeks, so that when they come together, they're focused on the issues, not the entire relationship, or focused on the things that have been affected them. Because sometimes the conflict can blend in, right? We're blending everything into the one conflict, as opposed to dealing with the things that are affecting us now. So
With
I
the
thought
issue at hand,
I,
right?
I thought that was very, very smart to have some schedule conflict time. That was brilliant. So listen, just like we know pay-per-view, when pay-per-view's coming, right? There's gonna be a fight every couple months. You need to schedule that, Kingdom City. It is wise to prepare for the fight than to go into the fight unprepared. Everybody's gonna lose when we go in unprepared.
Absolutely too, but also the other thing that helps you do is it helps you to manage your emotions. Because if you're kind of caught off guard by something, or you don't feel prepared to have this challenging conversation with your spouse, you're not at your best and you're not able to manage your emotions. So you're quick to get angry. You're quick to say things that are ridiculing or criticizing of your spouse, and you're quick to what you were talking about. We call it kitchen sinking, right? So I
Hmm.
may have a problem with you not cleaning up the house, but then I'm also going to add on that, you don't take care of the kids and you don't wash the clothes. And so you just you just kitchen sink, and that doesn't get us anywhere, and we don't prosper in that at all. So when we have scheduled a scheduled time that we're going to talk about this specific issue, we really need to talk about how we communicate in this marriage.
Yeah.
And so I would be remiss to say that um how you communicate is so important too. There should be no you do this, you do that, you do that. No, that should not be that way at all, because when you do that, you are ridiculing them, you are attacking them, and they feel that. And so when anybody feels attacked, they either come out swinging or they freeze and they shut down emotionally.
So
And
what should I say? What should I say? Like, if I don't want, if it is you, how,
yeah.
what are some other words that I could use other than you, I'm about to kill you, or
Right.
the finger, right?
Yeah. So I think it's, first of all, connect with the emotion that you're feeling. So it's, I feel angry when this happens.
Okay.
Connect with the emotion first. Like, what is your spouse's or partner's action? How is that making you feel?
Okay.
Communicate that, because oftentimes our spouse doesn't know how it makes them feel. The other spouse feels. They don't know. And so it's, when you do this, this makes me feel inadequate. When you do this, I don't feel supported, and so just connecting to that emotion, I think, is so essential. I think the other thing is put a request at the end of that. I feel when you say things like this, I'm not supported. I would really like for you to validate me more and support me more. And how I want you to do that is by telling me I did a good job with the kids today, telling me that you appreciate me for putting away the laundry. So put a request at the end of that as well. And it's a really simple formula. Connect with the emotion, and put what your ask is. What is it that you need from your spouse? Because 9 times out of 10, the spouse doesn't know what you need.
That's true.
And so we think that our spouse is a mind reader and they know exactly what we need and they know how we need to be communicated, and that is not the case at all.
Because we do feel that you've been with me long enough, right? You should know what I want by now. And I don't care how many times you say it. If they don't get it yet, then you need to find another way to say it till they do get it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've seen a number of times, and this is, as much as I'm a communicator, I have had to work at communicating with Kia. Like, Kia be like, look, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't get it. And I'd be like, yo, I'm saying it as plain as I know how to say it. But what I don't do is give up and say, forget about it, because all that does is create resentment. And when we start getting resentful, at least for me, I start acting out in ways that are not healthy for the marriage. So I have to work at continuing to communicate to ensure that what I'm saying, what I'm feeling, she hears it and understands it.
Absolutely. And so what you said was so key. After you have told the person how you feel and what your request is, you need to check in with them. So what I'm hearing you say is that you feel this and you're asking me to do this. Did I hear that right? So it's also validating what they said to you so that we're getting effective communication. A lot of the times, yeah, you're right. We do make assumptions. And then when we don't feel heard, we shut down and we retreat and we create distance. And so at that point, I need you to stop and say, okay, time out. We need to take a time out. It's okay to take breaks in between your conflict, right? Take a 20-minute break. If you think about boxing, right? They go to their corner, they retreat, they go to their corner, they go collect themselves.
Get the wounds healed up, put that Vaseline on.
Exactly my point. And so I want you to take that approach too with your conflict. If you feel like you can't manage your emotions, you're really getting frustrated, I think you need to say that to your spouse. You know what? This is a little too much for me right now. Let's revisit this in 20 minutes. And you need to put a specific time on that. It can't be like, in some arbitrary, we'll talk about this later, because that leads to avoidance, right?
Yes, it does.
So those are the things that really need to be necessary, like how we're communicating, and so that we're not criticizing, we're not ridiculing, and that we're also creating a specific schedule for when we're going to have these challenging conflicts. Because what happens is we don't want to have these conflicts every day, several times a day. Nope, this is our time. This is the place for this, and then after that, that is it. So whether we were able to come to a compromise or not, that is it. And to that point, we're not always going to be able to come to a compromise, and that's okay.
That's okay.
And that's okay.
That's what I was going to ask you. It is. I ask you, is it realistic to say that some things we're just not going to agree on, right? And
absolutely,
there's some things we're just not going to see eye to eye on, and that is absolutely okay, as long as your spouse feels heard.
absolutely,
You feel heard. There's some affirmation that happened. Then we can move on, right? Let's not hang our hat, y'all, on things that are trivial, things that that are not life threatening. We can move. We can agree to disagree.
absolutely. And I think that is key. Like, don't get caught into this fallacy that we always have to compromise and everything's 50-50 in this relationship. There's going to be times where it's 60-40 and 70-30. And that's okay. That is what we need in this environment, in this space right now. So just knowing that, I think is key. I think also the thing too is, you talked about like not focusing on trivial things. I think the biggest thing is pick your battles. Everything doesn't need to be a battle, especially because if your spouse is dealing with the anxiety and the stress of this in different ways and it's creating conflict, is that a conflict that's worthy of having? If it's not damaging you, the family, the marriage, is that a conflict worthy of having? And I'm gonna give you an example. My spouse, he is preoccupied with the risk of this whole COVID-19 stuff. And so he is, but it's in a very specific way. He's preoccupied with making sure that we don't run out of food.
Okay.
And so he overshops. And okay, this is what we're doing. And so now, right? But that's his way of coping. That's his way of making sure, and I also have to understand his position and role as a man, and making sure that his family is safe, and making sure that his wife is taken care of, and making sure that we're not without. And so that's the way that he's compensating in that way. So I don't have an argument with him or a conflict with him about his excessive shopping. And so I think we just need to give our spouses room in order to be able to cope in the way that is healthy for them, even if it's not how you cope.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's good that you recognize that's how he's coping, right? It can be easy for us to be annoyed by our spouse and how they're managing it, instead of recognizing, oh, I'd rather you cope that way. That's a healthy way to cope, as opposed to you drinking yourself into a stupor and you sleep.
Exactly.
Right. I get that. I get that. I can respect that a whole lot.
Yeah, but even outside of this anxiety too, pick your battles. Do we need to fight about whose night it is to do the dishes? Like, do we need to do that? Do the dishes, so.
Or let them sit till tomorrow.
Or just let them sit till tomorrow.
Not in your house. Dishes don't sit too long.
No, they don't sit too long. But those are the things. Pick your battles. Everything is not worthy of a battle. And is it worth like having things within your control, or do you want to have a healthy marriage, and do you want to have a marriage where we're both enjoying this together? So I think that's definitely something that I want us to definitely consider. The other thing too is just being able to creating separation in your roles. I think is going to be definitely key in this, as well as we're kind of traveling through this COVID-19 space. You are a father, a mother, a parent, a spouse, a worker, a business owner, and you have all these titles and all these labels, and they're all converging into one. And so now it's like, I feel overwhelmed, I feel taxed, and no, I don't want to focus on my marriage because I got all this to contend with. And so I think there definitely needs to be some separation of that. So putting hard deadlines and boundaries on when you're going to do things and when you're not going to do things. So for example, and this is something I'm struggling with myself now, is like my work hours are only from, 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon.
Okay.
And then I give my children from 2 to 4. And then from 4 to 10, it's me and my husband, and we're kicking it, and we're doing date night. So just making sure that you're not blurring those roles, because
Wow.
that can be very overwhelming. And 9 times out of 10, when we feel overwhelmed and when we're stressed, we're taking that out on the person that's closest to us and that we love, and that is our spouse. So
Yeah.
making sure that you're creating separation in these roles is going to be essential, and putting boundaries around those. So last night I was still working at midnight, and that's not healthy. That is not healthy at all. So, now it's like, okay, I got to be mindful, because that was time that I was encroaching on me and my husband watching the Ozarks, right? And
Yeah.
that's our special time. And so making sure that you're creating those boundaries so that you're also again, that was a point of connection for him, us watching the Ozarks together and
Okay.
binge watching a TV show for a couple of hours. And so making sure that you're not bringing other external things into that sacred time with your spouse, I think, is so essential.
Sometimes life arranges those roles for us, right? We go to work,
Absolutely.
we pick up the kid. Now it's homework time, it's dinner time. Now they're in the bed. But because we're all in the same place, all at the same time, those things, I mean, no wonder we feel overwhelmed, no
Yeah.
wonder we are drained.
Yeah.
So we have to, you're right, we have to create this thing. I'm thinking about, I've created a schedule for my kids, but I haven't done it for me and my spouse. I haven't done it for my marriage. I haven't done it for my relationship. I've been worried so much about keeping them on a regimen that I haven't thought about isolating those spaces, and committing that time. Oh, this is so good. So listen, y'all. I promised her that I will only keep her 30 minutes, right? But I've already kept her an hour. And here's the truth. She should be charging all of us $400 for this hour that we've been sitting with her, giving this wonderful information. So I'm going to give her an opportunity to say one more thing before we close out. But before we close, I want to say thank you.
Oh
I
yeah.
so appreciate this time, because our people do not put themselves in environments, in therapeutic environment. It's not the norm. I mean, mental health has really risen over the last 15 years, but it's not the
Absolutely.
norm amongst our families to hear this kind of information to help us manage our relationship. And in this environment, like we said, everything is so intensified. I just appreciate this advice. I get this stuff all the time. I can call her, Kia can call her, and we can still go down there and spend the night for a few days and just say, we work on it. But I just appreciate you sharing. I really, really do. Give us some more words, one more words of encouragement, or something else you think we can work on to help us cope while we're managing this environment.
Absolutely. I think that the key with this is to taking the opportunity to spend more time with the people that you love. So as opposed to looking at it as a burden or inconvenience, actually capitalizing in on this, right? And so I think we need to position our mental space in a more positive direction, and saying, okay, well, you know what, we are all in this house together. And so how do we capitalize on this? How do we make this more fun, this more entertaining? How do we do this? And I think parents have been doing an amazing job, whether it's, we're doing a family TikTok, or whether we're doing game night, or whatever it is, making sure that you're cultivating this time and really embracing it, because this is going to be unprecedented. You're not going to have unfettered access to your spouse like this.
Um,
This just isn't going to happen. So I would encourage you to capitalize on it. And so instead of focusing on how your spouse is irritating you and frustrating you, well, what is it that is great with us, and what is it that we have common ground on, and can we do more of that? And how do we take that and build on that and bring it into areas that we're struggling with as well? I think this is also definitely a time to kind of recognize where you are in your relationship. Do we need some fine tuning? Do we need some help, right? So maybe, do we need to go see a therapist, or do we need to go talk to our pastor about these things? So those are definitely things that I want us to kind of encourage. I think this is definitely a great time to kind of level set, figure out where we are, where we want to go as a unit, as a couple, and what's our plan to get there. I think is so important. Every couple should have a goal. What's our goal?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
You all have heard me say these sentiments over and over again for the last 6 weeks that we've been in here, that how you manage right now, how you take advantage of it right now is really going to determine the strength you have when we come out of this, right? The
absolutely.
truth is, we've got more difficult days ahead of us than we have behind us. This economy has collapsed. And for a lot of people, it's not going to get any better. I don't care how many stimulus stuff they pass. It's going to be a long time before this country recovers to a place of,
Mhm.
of, of what we thought was health again.
Right.
Um, and so this is a time for you to invest in your children. It's an opportunity for you to invest in your marriage. And so you need to
Absolutely.
take the time to do it. We are never going to see this kind of time again. I mean, I don't want to see this kind of time again. Not like this, right? I don't want to
Right.
be locked down. Like, we can go to Greece for 6 weeks and hang out, right? We can go to France and hang out, or Italy somewhere and hang out
Absolutely. Absolutely.
6 weeks and chill. But we're not going to get this kind of time again. And I really want to encourage you, don't allow the conditions on the outside to stress us to the point where we are not taking advantage of what we have together, y'all. I want to pray. I want to pray with you, Kingdom City, before we leave today. I want to pray for your marriages and pray for your children before we leave. Again, thank you so much,
Not
Aleiscia.
a problem.
I'm so happy you were here. Do me a favor. Tell us how to get in contact with you, name of your practice. The information will be coming across the screen in just a few minutes, but just share a little bit just about the practice. If anybody's in the Maryland area, this is the go-to right here. If you need some marital, just if you're not married but you have a relationship and you're struggling even with individuals, she is excellent. She is compassionate. She's a believer. If you're looking for a Christian counselor, talk to us a little bit about your practice before we go.
Sure. So I am at the Patrician Group, and that's thepatriciangroup.com. You can find me there. You can find my bio, reach out to us. And again, yes, I am available for individual, couples, and premarital. So I do it all. And I'm just excited and honored to be with you guys today.
Let's pray, y'all.
Yeah.
Lord, thank you for watching over us.
Mhm.
Thank you for keeping us. First of all, I'm asking you to bless the house of Abraham, Lord. Continue to keep your hand on their life, on their business, on their endeavors. Continue to keep their marriage strong. Help them be compassionate towards one another and patient with one another as we are all enduring through this season. I'm asking the same thing, Lord, for each and every person that's listening here. Help us to be compassionate towards one another and patient with one another. Give us the courage and the strength to confront the issues that may be persisting in our marriage. Our goal is that we might be light and that we might be salt, so that someone would see your love in our marriage, in our relationships. Lord, help us to walk in forgiveness with one another. Help us to see the opportunity that we have to reinvest in our relationship, reinvest in our marriage, so that we might be stronger when we come out of this. I pray a blessing over your children. I take authority over fear and doubt and confusion and anxiety. We pray your peace in our hearts and in our minds. In the name of Jesus, we pray. And everyone that agreed said, Amen. Hey,
Amen.
City, listen, make sure you're liking, make sure you are sharing, make sure you're starting a watch party. This is Mental Health Week. I want you to tag everybody you know, especially those crazy cousins you got that's losing their mind, those people you know that this COVID-19, this COVID culture. Look, the COVID culture is real. You see, I got my hat on, my grades is coming in. This COVID street culture is real. but make sure you're sharing this information. Make sure you are checking out our YouTube page at K-City Delco. We're uploading all the content that we are continuing to share, to keep your faith strong, to keep your perspective fresh as we endure through this season. Listen, I love y'all. We'll be back in a few days. I've got another Lincoln University graduate, my friend Venice Gardner. She's going to help us deal with ourselves. So we had Tina Bryce Brooks yesterday. She helped us deal with the anxiety with our children. We had Aleiscia Abraham today helping us deal with our couples. And then on and another day, we'll have my friend Venice Gardner. She'll be helping us deal with ourselves, the questions that we need to deal with, the questions that we need to ask ourselves in order to confront ourselves to deal with the issues that we have in this life. I love y'all. Be safe. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.